Okay, so to start with, what we are going to do here is simple a function def add. Okay, that's it. And a is equal to int of input of enter value, right? I'm going to say b is equal to int of input of enter value, and all I'm going to say is print a plus b. Now all I have to do is this is my function and I just call this function. How do I call this function? The function name followed by parenthesis. Function name followed by parenthesis. This triggers this function and executes this statement. This triggers the function and executes the statement. Once the execution of statements is completed, the function execution will also be completed. And again, if I want to execute these three statements again, all I have to do is add. That is the name that I have given, yes. And all I have to do is call that function followed by parentheses. Done. It will execute that statements again. And I can call this function any number of times. It is going to execute those same set of statements. So I'm going to create a new Python file, call it as functions practice.py, right? So what I'm going to say is def, and I'm going to call my function as add followed by parentheses and by colon. And I go to the next line, take the indentation, and then I'm going to say a is equal to int of input of, right, enter value, right? I'm going to repeat my statement to take by b value, right? Value for being specific, I'm going to say enter value for a, enter value for b, and I'll say print a plus b, right? It has to print. Now this is my function. My function declaration is completed. Now I'm going to call that function. I'm going to call this function once, right? Let us try to execute it. Right, see, I'm calling this function and it is executing the statements. Enter value for a, I'm going to say 10. Enter value for b, I'm going to say 20. Done. It printed 30 and the execution of the function is completed, and hence there are no more statements. Your file execution is also completed. Are we clear?
Clear, sir.
Yes, sir.
Now, if I have to call this function one more time, I'm going to call it one more time. Now I'm calling here 3 times. You see, now I'm going to execute this one more time. OK, so 10, 20, print, done. This is my when I called the function for the first time. Now I'm calling the function for another time, right? Again, enter value for a. I'm just now another call because I have made one more call here, right? Done. So I have called this function 3 times and the same set of statements got executed 3 times. To explain, so let me just call this, right? And after this, I'm going to say print. So let me just do this then. I'm just adding some strings to the print statement so that it is easily understandable. OK, so if I execute this first time, it gets a call, done, 10 I'll enter, 20 I'll enter, so fine, it done. So this execution is completed. Now it proceeded further, and this is waiting for the user input because I called this function again, right? Right, the second function execution is also completed. Now it is waiting for the third function call. So I'm going to say 100, 100, and done. Third execution is also completed. See, what we have achieved here is I have written these three statements only once and I have put them into a block, and that is a function on which I have given a name for that function. By here, I'm calling it as add as a function name. And if I have to execute this set of statements, all I have to do is call this function. Done. It is going to execute the statement. Again, I'm calling this function. It is executing the set of statements. I'm calling again. It is executing the set of statements. Okay, this is how a function is written. So def followed by a name of a function, followed by parenthesis open and close and colon. Then go to the next line, take four spaces and enter your set of statements that you want to be part of that function. So here I want these three statements to be part of it, right? And done. So outside of this, that's it. So I came again four spaces backward, which means whatever this add, print, and all of these statements doesn't belong to that function anymore. These statements doesn't belong to that function anymore. So anything which has taken four spaces and indentation is used and it has basically pushed four spaces inside that function after the def, which means only those statements belong to this function, and anything outside the indentation is basically out of that function. Okay, so now if I have to write a function for a factorial, right? If I have to write a function for a factorial, now I told right in one of the statement, a function can also take parameter. A function can also take parameter. Now what happens? I'll write a function for factorial. Okay, so I'm just going to comment this out for a moment. A function will be executed only if we call it. If we don't call it, the function doesn't get executed. It only gets created, but it doesn't get executed. So here, what I'm doing here is I've created the function, but are we calling this function anywhere? Wherever the calling part has been commented out, which means this will not get executed, right? I'm not calling this function anywhere now. So if I execute this, it will not do anything because a function is declared, but nobody is actually calling that function. Until a function is called, it is not going to execute. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to say def factorial. I'm going to create a function and val is equal to 5 print. Okay, not print, right? I'm going to take fact equal to 1. Then I'm going to say for I in range of. So or else let me do this. I'm going to remove this val for I in range of 5. Right? So I'll take 6 and I'll start from 1. I'll go till 6, right? And fact is equal to fact into I, right? And after the loop, what I get, the output is print fact. Okay, so this factorial function is going to, what is this factorial function doing? I have defined my factorial function and I'm calling my function. So it is executing this statement and this set of statements and giving the value for 5 factorial. Giving the value for 5 factorial. Yes. Now, if I have to run this function for 6th factorial or 7 factorial or 8 factorial, what am I supposed to do? A function's primary objective is to help us with the code reusability. Yes.
Yes, sir.
But if I have written this function and this function, whatever I have written is only helping with the 5 factorial. What if I want to have a 6 factorial? Should I go for another function? Right? So if we are going for another function, there is no use of it, right? So we have to see a way where I can use the functions parameter or arguments to make it dynamic. So I can use any number and the same set of statements should be executed. So that is where we call something called parameters. So parameters, or something like this. If I define a function, if I define a function, okay, right? In this parameters, in this parentheses, I can pass parameters, right? Here I'm just saying a, which means this will take one parameter. My a is a parameter. A is a parameter, or you can call it as argument. Okay, I can use this value a within my block of statements. I can use this value a within the statements here. Okay, so I can use this a within my block of statements to to use the value. Okay, now this is one parameter. Okay, we can also use multiple parameters also, right? So what is that? So def function a comma b comma c. Same thing. Within the parentheses, any values that I present are going to be parameters. Within this parentheses, if I'm using any value, right, they're called parameters, right? So first parameter, comma, second parameter, comma, third parameter. So this takes how many parameters? Three parameters, right? So I can use this statement, this A, B, or C values within the block of statements, right? Now, if at all, if I'm writing a value for a factorial, so if now let us go back to our problem. So there with that function call, I was able to, whenever I run, it was only giving the value for fifth factorial, 5 factorial. It is not giving value for any other factorial. Yes. Now, how can we solve that? Okay. So now what I'm going to do is def factorial. And for what value you need factorial for? For what value you need factorial for? What I'm going to do here is fact is equal to 1 for I in range of 1 comma val plus 1. 1 comma val plus 1. Let me rewrite it. 1 comma val plus 1. Okay. Then fact is equal to fact into I. And after that, once the for loop is completed, you will get the overall factorial. And I'm going to say print fact. Okay. Now what we have done here is I have passed in some value. I have passed in some value, some parameter, right? Parameter. And I'm using that parameter here. I'm using that parameter here. So at the time of calling, if I'm passing 3 as my factorial, the same 3 will be passed here. If I send 4 while calling the function, I have the same 4 will be sent. If I pass 5 while calling the function, the same 5 will be sent. Using which you can make your function dynamic, which means this function now will work for any factorial. This function will now work for any factorial. And at the time of calling this function, right? Right? And we know this function is taking one parameter. We know this function is taking one parameter, and I should give that value for that parameter. Now, if I pass 5 here, the 5 will be assigned to this value. Okay, will be assigned to this value, and the same 5 will be passed here. So it will be like for I in range of 1 comma 5 plus 1. Are we clear? If I want for 8 factorial, I'm going to pass 8 at the time of calling. Try this by parameterizing. So here I'm going to take my val, and instead of 6, what I'm going to say is val plus 1. Now, if now this takes one parameter, yes. Now I have to ensure I pass that parameter. Otherwise, this is going to throw an error. What is it saying? It's saying factorial missing one required positional argument val. So, which means it is taking one parameter or argument. I have to pass that argument. So, right, I'm going to pass 3. What is 3 factorial? 6. Now 3 is passed into this val, and that same val is used here in the range function, and that factorial is computed. And if I want 5 factorial, I'm going to pass 5. If I want 8 factorial, I'm going to pass 8. It is the same function, but now it is behaving dynamically. So based on whatever the value that I'm going to send, it is giving that factorial to me. 3 factorial is 6, 5 factorial is 120, 8 factorial is 40320, and 10 factorial is this number. Now, with just one change, right, we were able to make this function dynamic. We were able to make this function dynamic. Okay, homework, right? Create a calculator. Okay, right? You have to create a function called function for addition, which take two parameters, right? And prints the a plus b, right? And create a function called subtraction, create a function called for multiplication, create a function for division. Okay, and all of them takes two parameters or three parameters or the four parameters, whatever is the value. So eventually I have to print the output of it. Print, right? A minus b, print, like for example, A into B into C or something like this. Okay, now you have to get the output. So I create four functions: addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. And you should be able to call that function, pass those two values, 2, 3. This is going to give 5, 2 plus 3. This is assignment 1. The second assignment is, remember the palindrome? Without colon colon minus 1 or reverse. Okay,